Rising tensions between the U.S. and North Korea once again taking center stage worldwide. North Korea test-fired another ballistic missile late Friday, an act of defiance against Trump administration warnings. President Trump responded in a tweet. North Korea disrespected the wishes of China and its highly respected president when it launched, though unsuccessfully, a missile today. Bad! Exclamation point. And North Korea, just one foreign policy challenge, of course, that's facing President Trump. Overseas, a lot of people expressing serious concerns over his inexperience and unpredictability. With more on the worldview of Trump, here's NBC chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel.
Around the world for nearly 100 days, the top story has been President Trump. And he's being watched with more than a bit of concern.
Quite a few people are saying, well, we're still here. I think there was a genuine fear.
And that's the bar. That's good.
Absolutely.
If we're still alive.
Yeah. There isn't all-out nuclear conflict, although it is openly talked about. I find that quite extraordinary.
There were fierce exchanges.
Alistair Stewart, a top anchor at Britain's ITV News, has been observing foreign affairs for over 40 years.
There is a genuine, real and tangible concern. And it's based not so much on the idle threats of putting people in their place. It is based upon that perception of ineptitude.
Around the globe, we found a similar feeling that President Trump is careening from crisis to crisis without a foreign policy strategy. In South Korea,
he's like starting fights with everyone.
To the West Bank.
He just doesn't know what he's doing.
To Germany.
He doesn't really think about what he does. Maybe he thinks about it a lot, but he seems rude, harsh, and not presidential.
People don't seem to know what to expect or believe from President Trump as he plays brinksmanship with the nuclear-armed and highly erratic North Korea, punishes America's neighbors, Mexico and Canada, normally considered essential allies, and flip-flops on Syria, lobbing a few dozen missiles at a regime his administration seemed to back a few days before. Nearly 100 days of President Trump have passed, and if the best international observers can say is we lived through it, these are truly uncharted times.
I think our view here, observing it as impartial reporters, is like a school report that says the start wasn't quite as bad as it might have been, but can do and must do better.
So let's talk about the president's place in the world, the view of him in the world with our panelists, MSNBC military analyst General Barry McCaffrey, MSNBC contributor Steve Clemens, and national security analyst Rebecca Grant. Let's go big picture first, Steve, if I can. And is that an accurate reflection? I mean, I know I've traveled quite a bit just since the election of President Trump, and I do hear a lot from people on the street concern, whether it's in Europe or other parts of the world. But is that anecdotal, or how much nervousness is there?
There's a staggering degree of nervousness because no matter where we go next, what has already happened is that Donald Trump spent his campaign and his first 100 days of the presidency, at least much of it, hugging Russia, putting allies on their heels, shaking alliances and raising questions about them, saying negative things about NATO, then saying great things about NATO. That what's happened in alliances, he's injected doubt in our most critical alliances around the world. If you're a war planner, if you're thinking about scenarios and simulations of your dark days and whether the United States is with you or not, those countries need to begin to think about what if the United States is not there. So Donald Trump has already done devastating damage to American alliances around the world, and there's big doubt. It doesn't mean we can't recover to a certain degree, but that trust has been shaken for a long time. It's going to take a long time to get back.
And nowhere, I think, are people more nervous than about North Korea, understandably so. Let me talk a little bit about what happened today. The North Korea, I guess overnight, test firing that ballistic missile. And actually, right after Secretary of State Rex Tillerson warned that a failure to curb their nuclear and ballistic missile programs could lead to catastrophic consequences. Now we have the president in a new interview with CBS. This just went online. Let's play it.
Mr. President, you and the administration said to North Korea, don't test a missile. They have tested a missile. Is the pressure not working?
Well, I didn't say don't test a missile. He's going to have to do what he has to do. But he understands we're not going to be very happy. And I will tell you, a man that I've gotten to like and respect, the president of China, President Xi, I believe has been putting pressure on him also, but so far, perhaps nothing's happened, and perhaps it has. This was a small missile. This was not a big missile. This was not a nuclear test, which he was expected to do 3 days ago. We'll see what happens.
You say not happy. What does that mean?
I would not be happy. If he does a nuclear test, I will not be happy. And I can tell you also, I don't believe that the president of China, who is a very respected man, will be happy either.
Not happy mean military action?
I don't know. I mean, we'll see.
General, let me get your reaction to that.
Well, look, that was a terrific report by Richard Engel, for starters. He pretty well laid out the concerns. There has been monumental incoherence in the foreign policy and national security policy, not just from the president changing his mind, but also among his senior people. Secretary Tillerson to say one thing, the UN ambassador another, the president a third. There's a bit of good news here. We've got a very serious, capable Secretary of Defense, Jim Mattis. H.R. McMaster now has pushed out Flynn, who I actually think had a mental health problem. And so there's some reason to believe that things are going to be better in the coming years. I think the other thing we may point at is there has been a muscular response to some threats to the United States. Not very well rolled out, the carrier group Vinson, North Korea, but nonetheless, at least there's an attempt to stand up to these threats. But, when you back away from all of it, you can't insult NATO. You can't insult the head of government of Germany. You can't alienate our neighbors, Mexico and Canada. You can't insult the Australians and have a sensible foreign policy.
Meantime, Rebecca, since he brought up the Vinson, North Korea has responded to the movements as a reckless action of the war maniacs aimed at an extremely dangerous nuclear war. Having said that, when you see that movement, when you see what happened in Syria, when you see what happened in Afghanistan, what do you think the impact is of what clearly is a message that this president wants to send, that I'm a strong leader and I will take action?
Well, clearly Trump is sending that message, and let's look at a little bit at the military facts of the latest missile launch. Pacific Command is telling us that it's the same missile all month long. It's not great technology. It is single-stage, liquid-fueled, and so we're seeing these tests, but they're failing. And what I see is that this is pressure that Kim Jong-un is feeling. He's done this clearly in retaliation for the UN Security Council, and I think Trump needs to stay the course that he's set. He's trying to get China to be the good cop. He's trying to be the bad cop. I think he needs to keep pressing on this one, and we'll see what he says. He's put down a little bit of a soft red line for us, but he needs to keep going and stay the course.
Just the fact that the test happened, though, Steve, does it say anything about the influence of President Xi?
Well, we've been seeing North Koreans basically give the finger to China for many, many years. This is not new. I mean, there's no doubt that China has a lot of influence with North Korea, but is not definitive influence. There have been times.
So is the president depending on that too much?
Absolutely. I think the notion, and I think every analyst that I hear, that somehow China is going to be the flag for the United States and somehow marshaling North Korea into place, doesn't understand that China's strategic vision does not coincide with America's views. They are very different. They may overlap in a certain place, and certainly China has modestly sanctioned North Korea in some ways, but they have zero interest at all in any military conflict. The status quo for a long time is fine with them. And another part of this is they don't trust Trump either. And after the harassment that Trump has engaged with Xi before he began praising him, for them, the fact that they can keep Donald Trump distracted with some uncontrollable guy in the Korean Peninsula also gives China strategic depth. You have to understand that it's not us moving China. China may be moving us and prodding us in various ways with North Korea.
So when you look at how this is being viewed across the world, and certainly even among our allies, General, are they looking at Trump in and of himself, or are they looking at the three military men that you've mentioned and that so many people have seen as a sign of a positive sign about what this White House is doing, certainly as it goes to our foreign policy, the removal of General Flynn? Does that make them breathe at least some sigh of relief and say there are grown-ups in the House?
Well, first of all, I agree with Steve's assessment of the situation. I think there's enormous anxiety in a part of the international community, both our adversaries and our friends. At the end of the day, they understand that the President of the United States, under his 6 constitutional powers, is the commander-in-chief. And when it comes to foreign policy, he has enormous unilateral authority. And the fact that he changes his viewpoints so frequently, and that some of them seem so ill-timed, is of great concern to our friends.
What's the level of concern right now, do you think, Rebecca, that there could be some sort of conflict on the Korean Peninsula?
No question, there's a high level of concern, but let's remember that we do have missile defenses in place. I'm really glad to see THAAD going into South Korea. That's an excellent system for them. We have our ground-based interceptors here. We have military forces in the region. We have 28,000 Americans, soldiers and airmen there, and they say they are ready. Fight tonight is their slogan. So we are as ready as we can be. We need to keep engaged with China. Absolutely concerned, but there is no quick fix here, and we have to keep going forward.
Rebecca Grant, Steve Clemens, General Barry McCaffrey, thanks to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.